Have you ever just stared at a stock chart, watching that line zip up and down and thought to yourself, what is actually making that happen? Is it some super complex algorithm, some big secret? Well, let's get into it, because the answer is way simpler and honestly a lot more human than you'd think. Today, we're going to break down how stock prices really move. To get our heads around the stock market, let's just forget about stocks for a second. Let's start with a much easier question, one you probably already know the answer to. How does any simple market work?
It all boils down to two huge forces, supply and demand, right? Think about an animal market right before a massive festival like Eid al-Adha. Everybody wants to buy an animal, so demand is through the roof. But there's only so many animals to go around. So what happens to the price? It skyrockets. Then, the day after the festival, nobody's buying. Demand completely collapses. And just like that, the price drops. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's take that super simple idea and apply it to a place that seems way more complicated, the stock market. You might actually be surprised to hear that even though they seem like they're from different planets, they're basically twins. No, really, it's that straightforward. In the animal market, sellers have animals, buyers want them. In the stock market, sellers have shares, buyers want them. The magic ingredient in both places, the thing that makes it all work, is bargaining, that back and forth to find a price that both sides can agree on. So, how does this bargaining actually play out in the stock market? Well, it has its own special lingo for sure, but the idea is exactly the same as haggling for a better deal. First up, you've got the bid price. Just think of this as the buyer's opening offer. It's someone out there in the world raising their hand and saying, hey, I'm willing to pay this much for one share. That's their bid. And on the other side of that coin, you've got the ask price. This is the seller's turn to talk. They're saying, you want my share? Fine. This is the price I'm demanding. It's what they're asking for. And when a buyer's bid finally meets a seller's ask, or they find some middle ground, that's the magic moment. That's a trade. The price of that final, successful agreement is called the last traded price, or LTP. It's the freshest proof we have that a deal actually went down. So here's what that looks like on a real trading screen. See that little gap? The most a buyer is offering right now is 90.40, but the least a seller is willing to take is 90.45. Now look at the last traded price, the LTP. It tells the story of what just happened. It's at 90.40, which means a seller gave in and accepted the buyer's offer. That's the story right there. Okay, so you get the language of the bargain, but how do you actually get in on the action? Well, you use these tools called orders, and there are really two main types you've got to know. When you go to place a trade, you're faced with this really basic choice. Do you want control or do you want speed? Do you want to name your exact price and be patient? Or do you want the deal done right this second, no matter what? This choice is between your two main tools, the limit order and the market order. With a limit order, you're the patient bargainer. You're saying, look, I will only buy this stock if it drops to X, or I will only sell if it climbs to Y. You have total control over the price. But here's the catch. If nobody ever agrees to your price, your order just sits there, doing nothing. A market order is the total opposite. It's all about pure speed. You don't even specify a price. You just yell, buy me this stock right now at the best available price. The system then instantly finds the lowest ask price out there, and bam, the trade is done. You give up control over the exact price, but what you get is a guarantee of getting it done right now. All right, so we have all the pieces on the board: bids, asks, and our two order types. Now, let's put it all together and watch how a single piece of news can use these exact tools to make a stock price just explode. Let me tell you a story. So, imagine a tech company drops a bombshell. They've invented something absolutely revolutionary. That news flashes across every screen on the planet, and instantly, everyone wants a piece of this company. The whole feeling around it changes overnight. And this sets off a perfect chain reaction. First, the amazing news creates a stampede of buyers. The people who already own the stock, the sellers, they suddenly realize they're holding a winning lottery ticket. They've got all the power, so they start placing limit orders to sell, but at much higher prices. Meanwhile, the buyers, they've got this massive fear of missing out, so they start smashing the buy button with market orders, basically telling the system, I don't care about the price, just get me in. And with every single trade, the price is forced higher and higher and higher. Before the news, our tech stock was just trading peacefully at 45 rupees per share. just another Tuesday.
But then the news hits. A seller, let's call him Faisal, who owns shares, he thinks, people are desperate. I am not selling for 45 anymore. He places a limit order to sell his shares at 200 rupees. A moment later, a frantic buyer places a market order. The system finds Faisal's offer and boom, the trade executes. The new last traded price is now 200 rupees. The price just quadrupled in a second.
So other shareholders, Ibrahim and Hassan, they see this happen, and they get even bolder. Ibrahim places a limit order to sell at 250, and Hassan puts one in at 350. Just then, some big investment fund places a huge market order to buy thousands of shares. That order is so big, it just chews through all of Ibrahim's shares at 250 and then immediately buys all of Hassan's at 350. In less than a minute, the stock that was 45 rupees is now trading at 350. So there you have it. That price isn't some magical number. It is simply the location of the very last transaction, a transaction driven entirely by human emotion and action.
And you know what? This whole thing works in reverse too. If bad news hits, panicked sellers flood the market with sell at any price market orders. And the patient buyers, they just sit back with these low-ball limit orders, waiting. The price then has to plummet down to meet their low bids. It's the exact same machine, just flipped upside down. So when you strip everything else away, what is the stock market? It's not a calculator. It's a stadium. On one side, you have the buyers, full of hope and the fear of missing out. On the other, you have the sellers, driven by greed or sometimes by panic. And the stock price? That's just the scoreboard and their constant emotional tug of war. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. If every price you see on that screen is just the end of the last story told by a buyer and a seller, what story do you think the market is going to tell tomorrow?